Hey folks, this is Riker with the Gaming News Wrap-Up video where we discuss the happenings of the week. This week's topics include Diablo 3's PTR balance update, how pay-to-win is Lost Ark, possible PC support for Diablo Immortal, and more. As always, discussion timestamps can be found in the description below, but right before you skip ahead, just a quick reminder to ring that sub notification bell to be alerted to new Saturday episodes and stay up to date with gaming news highlights. Now before we move on, just a quick word from this video's sponsor, Squarespace. I built my website Riker.com using Squarespace, and I was able to do everything myself, quickly and easily, and with zero education in the field, all thanks to how easy Squarespace is to work with. This week I wanted to update my Diablo 3 page with the new seasonal info. So, watch how easily I embed a new video, change text and links, all in about 2 minutes. Most of it was handled with nothing but a few intuitive clicks and key presses. And for the more complicated stuff, I was a quick Google search away from an answer. I've never had an easier time making a professional looking website. Basically, if you want to build a website, I recommend Squarespace. And Squarespace is currently offering my viewers 10% off your first purchase with them. Just go to squarespace.com/Riker or click the link in the description to sign up and start building your online presence. That's squarespace.com/RHYKKER and use code Riker to get started today. In our first piece of news, rumors are heating up about a new Dead Space game. According to VentureBeat, EA will announce this new game on July 22nd during their EA Play Live digital event. And this was corroborated by Eurogamer and Gematsu. The new Dead Space is said to be a reimagining rather than a sequel to the existing trilogy. And it's being developed by EA Motive in Montreal, which also developed 2020's Star Wars Squadrons. So it seems they're carving themselves out a niche in the sci-fi genre, and I look forward to the reveal. On to some quick Path of Exile news. It won't be long before we get a teaser for the next expansion. On Twitter, the devs shared, quote, "At the end of next week on July 1st, we're planning to post a short teaser of our upcoming expansion, which confirms the date of our announcement livestream and launch, and also provides a little glimpse of what's to come. We can't wait to show you." Now, based on this timeline, a league start of roughly mid, maybe late July seems likely. Now, I'm wondering, what are you folks expecting the next expansion to be about? I'm gonna guess circles. On to some Wolcen news. The devs released their monthly dev update for June, and it actually includes a roadmap for the rest of the year. Content patch 3 will come in early to mid-July and include a massive revamp to summons, including having their visuals completely redone, their mechanics redesigned with improved AI, power scaling, and quality of life features. The patch will also include new environments, new skill damage type variations, and new cosmetic armor. Then Content patch 4 is slated for September or October and will include new endgame activities and reward systems, new monsters, new environments, new skill damage type variations, and new cosmetic armor. I'm especially interested in the new endgame activities. Hopefully there'll be a sizable content update. Then Content patch 5 is slated for November or December and will include new environments, new monsters, and controller support. It's something big that they've been working on for a long time. Now, the devs specified that bug-fixing patches will release whenever possible, as well as quality of life updates. On to some last Epoch news. Everyone is wondering when multiplayer will be implemented into the game, with the common belief being that we'll get it by the end of the year. Well, this week we got an official response from the lead dev. Quote, "We're currently working on lots of optimizations. It's running pretty smoothly 90% of the time. But then you'll run into a large, dense pack of small mobs that need to send reliable RPCs on death, and will get some lag, for example. Fixable, just working through it. We play test with the larger team every Wednesday and are still finding plenty of things to address, but overall it's feeling good and playable. But there are still a number of things to do after the technical list." The team he's referring to is basically they have some NDA closed alpha testing of the multiplayer that's been going on for a year now? He added, quote, "We're working with some very talented engineers internally and externally. Some that have worked on back-end services for games like League of Legends and Battle.net. So things are going smoothly. We're confident, busy as heck, and it will be ready once it's ready. as they're very adamant on getting it right so everyone enjoys playing with their friends and the larger player base of Ethereal. It's great to see how seriously they're taking getting multiplayer right, going so far as to get external help and leverage the experience of engineers who worked at Riot and Blizzard. Now, last Epoch's ideal launch window would have been mid-2020 in order to capitalize on pretty much the lack of anything significant happening in the ARPG scene before the tsunami that's coming with Diablo 2 Resurrected, Lost Ark, Path of Exile 2, Diablo 4. That said, it's still better that the game doesn't launch before all the multiplayer hiccups are worked out. We've seen what happened when an ARPG launches before it's ready. This is a very small scene with a lot of competition, and players have long memories and are not forgiving. Onto some Lost Ark news. As this game is preparing for its Western release, a big topic continues to be its monetization and whether it is pay to win. A lot of players have been coming to the game's and the developers' defense among these discussions. Now, apparently the game director has been transparent and upfront in his communications over the past years. He has publicly apologized to his players when a patch was game-breaking. He would promise to fix the problems, and then he delivered on those promises. Now, in the recent Korean Summer Update showcase, the director actually spoke a bit about the Western release during Q&A. He expressed that he's aware of the concerns of Western players regarding pay-to-win. He says he's read forums and Reddit posts about it. Now, he admits that depending on your perspective, there are elements in the game that you can consider pay-to-win. And he's referring here to how some people feel that pay to speed up progress falls into pay-to-win, whereas other people feel that these are two different things. He expressed gratitude towards his players who were going into these threads and clearing up any misinformation, giving more insight into the game's monetization, and he also credited his Korean players for helping to shape the game into its current state for the Western release. Now, for a bit more info, a Korean player explained how in Korea, pay-to-win refers to having in-game content locked behind a paywall with no other way to reach that content. And that content would help make you stronger than other players who don't pay for that same content. And he clarified that in Lost Ark, all players can access all content, so by the Korean definition of pay-to-win, Lost Ark is not pay-to-win. All players can access all content with a reasonable amount of time and effort invested. You do progress faster if you spend money, but even if you don't spend $1, you'll still reach the same destination as the player who does spend money. Other players are further explaining how in PvP, gear is equalized. So no amount of monetary investment matters in PvP. And there's also apparently a hell mode, I'm not sure if the translation on that is right, that is basically the most challenging and prestigious PvE content in the game that also has gear equalization. So every player is on the same level during these raids. No monetary investment gives you any advantage. Again, though, I'm just relaying information that I'm researching. I'm not speaking from experience yet, but I do look forward to trying out the game and seeing for myself. On to Diablo news, starting quickly with Diablo 4. A community manager confirmed that the D4 quarterly update blog post will be coming soon. Our expectation was by end of June, since that is the end of the quarter, and aligns up with the typical release window for these updates. So if it is end of June, that means next week. As a reminder, the topic will revolve around characters and character art. Onto some quick Diablo Immortal on PC news. This week, Microsoft revealed that it'll be bringing Android apps to Windows 11. Microsoft is partnering with Intel to use Intel Bridge technology to allow Android apps to run natively in Windows 11 without needing an extra emulator like you would currently have to use. The Android apps will be available via the Amazon App Store, which will be integrated into the Microsoft Store. The Microsoft Chief Product Officer said, quote, "These integrated apps, what it does, it brings you into Windows from the most professional editing apps all the way through to the most casual apps you can think of when you lean back on the couch." Now, while games weren't explicitly mentioned here as being supported, if the technology can run the most professional editing apps, I'd hope that means it could also run games. Professional video and photo editing software can be quite heavy duty. And I'd be upset if the performance on Windows 11 was worse than on my phone if I'm a professional using these professional apps. Now, my big question here is, does Blizzard need to opt into this? Or can they otherwise opt out of allowing Immortal to work with this? Is this something that'll just be available for all Android apps and there's nothing Blizzard can do about it? Microsoft says Windows 11 will be out this holiday season, so sometime between late November and Christmas, which is right around when we're expecting Diablo Immortal to release as well. On to some Diablo 3 news. PTR for Season 24 has been running for a bit more than a week now, and we got an update this week with some tweaks, including a balancing pass on the new Ethereals. Now, every class has 3 Ethereals, but in many cases there was a clear winner among the 3. So it seems the devs have taken feedback into account and are buffing the weaker Ethereals and nerfing the stronger ones, or otherwise specializing them further to ensure each Ethereal has some kind of usage case. For Crusader, Kalim's Will now received an interesting property. Killing an enemy reduces the cooldown of Steed Charge by 1 second. This could potentially make it the ideal speedrunning Ethereal. For Demon Hunter, the Barisa currently has an effect, a 35% chance to freeze enemies on hit. And while that might seem great at first glance, at high levels of play, top players find this kind of hard CC actively detrimental. A freeze is a hard crowd control, and enemies, when subjected to hard crowd control effects, they build up crowd control resistance. Once they've built up that resistance, you can't crowd control them anymore, and at higher difficulties and high levels of play, you want to have very tight control over when you are applying hard crowd control to enemies. So I know a suggestion that was put forth to the devs was to somehow remove this freeze effect, change it into a different kind of crowd control, a softer crowd control. But it seems instead Blizzard has just fully leaned into it by adding as an effect to the Barisa, hits against frozen enemies are always critical hits, which is cool. This is something new, this is something different. It helps make the Barisa feel different. It doesn't solve the problem for high greater rifts, but maybe it's Blizzard's way of saying, hey, this item is not for pushing greater rifts, this is for speedrunning, where you're not building up that hard CC, where you're killing enemies fast enough before they become crowd control immune, and we're gonna help you kill them fast enough by making you always crit against frozen enemies. Then we see on the Doomslinger, it's received a property, killing an elite pack increases move speed by 30 seconds for 7 seconds. Now this was the weakest of the 3 Demon Hunter Ethereals, and this power does make it seem better suited for speedrunning, so maybe Doomslinger will be for T16 rifts, and Barisa for speed greater rifts, where you need extra damage. The Wind Force now has extra max discipline on it and resource cost reduction, which turns it into an effective replacement for the Yang's recurve in any build that would be using a Yang's recurve. Now for the Monk, the Jade Talon was the best ethereal weapon, so the other 2 are getting buffs. Bartuk's Cutthroat now has an added affix. Consecutive hits to enemies increases damage by 10% up to 100%, so that's up to double damage if you keep attacking the same enemy. And I believe this is likely to make Bartuk's the best ethereal for greater rift pushing. Then on Shadow's Killer, they added the affix reduce the damage of enemies hit by 25% for 5 seconds. And I'm not sure this power is strong enough to make this item worth it. Maybe if it was 50% damage reduction, then yes. As it stands right now, I don't know. I've seen time and time again, more damage win out over damage reduction, unless that damage reduction is really inviting. For Necromancer, Soul Harvest was incredibly powerful, and it has now received a significant nerf. It had crit damage on it, not anymore. It also had a huge amount of extra max essence. Now it only has a little bit more max essence. Necromancer builds have a way of basically translating max essence into more damage, and so this was just a whole lot of ways to stack a ton of damage. Then for Witch Doctor, they've now made each of the 3 ethereals buff a different type of Witch Doctor's skill. Ghost Flame now buffs secondary skills, so this item will be used for Arakir Firebat's Witch Doctors. Ariok's Needle now buffs decay skills, meaning this item will be used for Mundanugu and for Helltooth builds. And the Gidbin now buffs voodoo skills, so this is going to be the Zunimasa item. I think it's cool that each item will see a different usage case here, where they've specialized them into the different branches, and now, depending on what flavor of Witch Doctor you're running, you're going to want a different Ethereal. Arakir typically wouldn't be seeing much use, because it is significantly weaker than those other two builds I mentioned, but Arakir is the starter set for Witch Doctors in Season 24, so if you, I guess, happen to get the Ethereal before you farm up a better set than Arakir's, well, you can use it. Now for Wizard, on the Oculus, they've added the affix, reduce the damage of enemies hit by 25% for 5 seconds. Now, the Wizard has, as Ethereals, 2 one-handers and a 2-hander. And the 2-hander is by far the most powerful, but it's quite difficult to work a 2-hander into a Wizard build. Then the Oculus was just better than the third item, so the Oculus is what will be used most of the time. This 25% damage reduction, as we expressed before, it's not a huge amount, but it's taking the already most inviting one-hander, making it a bit more inviting. And they're also buffing now the other one, the Wizard Spike, one-hander. Adding the affix, consecutive hits to enemies increases damage by 10% up to 100%, so that's double damage, and that is making Wizard Spike now an inviting option. So now, it went from being you would always take the Oculus to now, well, it's not clear. I personally think the Wizard Spike's gonna win out, but I'm seeing usage of both at this point. But I'm actually a bit concerned now that the two-hander may not see usage anymore. But this is just some quick preliminary thoughts. Still gonna be testing things out as the days come. Now for Monk, we also saw some fixes for the ally interactions, because Monk's got the whole Inna set rework, along with supporting items and skills to make Inna a true pet build. What we saw, incidentally, was the rise of the Legacy of Dreams Wave of Light pet monk, which was using some of the buffed items and was actually overshadowing Inna's. So now they have given a huge buff to Inna's 6-piece, and they have nerfed the supporting items, the Crudus Boots and Bindings of the Lesser Gods, which is what the Legacy of Dreams build was using. So they're basically just shifting the bonuses back onto Inna to let Inna be the star here. Wave of Light was super strong. Now it'll be significantly less boosted. It was gonna rocket from C tier into S tier, literally. Now I'm not sure. We gotta look things over whether it will be up there at all anymore. But Inna at least is in a much better place. Inna's was the target here. It's never great when the devs decide to buff something and then it's still never used. So the focus on them, they were focusing on Inna's. It looks like Inna's is in a pretty good spot now. Preliminary results are indicating, but again, we're going to test that out. Again, stay tuned for a video on Ethereals, and in our testing, we've actually discovered the fastest way to farm Ethereals, because again, you have that conquest. If you collect all 21, you unlock their transmogs forever, so we're going to have a video out on exactly how to ensure you can all get that done by the end of the season. And that's going to wrap up this week's video. But do be sure to have checked out last week's video in which we discuss the upcoming Diablo 2 Resurrected beta date. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon and unlocking behind the scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos and subscribe to join Rikers Raiders for more gaming content.